It's Platt, and today we try beer named after a real funny country club. That's next to Platt's Beer of the Week. So the particular beer we have today is Bushwood, named after, of course, the classic Bushwood Country Club in the movie Caddyshack, one of the funniest movies, in my opinion, ever. Just my opinion. But anyway, classic movie. This beer is a collaboration with Brewdog's Brewing, based out of Scotland. We previously reviewed Hellcat. That was a collaboration with Iron Maiden. This is a collaboration with whoever owns the name Caddyshack. A little background into Brewdogs. Brewdogs was founded in 2007 by James Watt and Martin Dickey. Dickey had previously worked at Thornbridge Brewing, but left when him and James decided to live the dream. One of their first big breaks, or whatever, big moments, was in 2009. They purchased their first bar in Aberdeen, Scotland. We've talked about before that UK brewers get to also own the bars that sell their beer, unlike here in the US where Miller and Coors are not owning Miller Coors bars. Now there's a Budweiser beer park on the strip, but that's a licensing thing. They don't actually own it. So they kind of get that advantage. Today I want to say they have over 130 different pubs. They also have 5 different beer-themed hotels, including 2 here in the US. They're both in Ohio. You might have seen pictures. They have the little beer fridge in the shower, so you have your shower beer that everybody loves. Who doesn't? One of the things that helped get them notoriety early on was they produced some of the highest ABV beers in the world. In 2009, they released Tactical Nuclear Penguin, 32% alcohol by volume. At the time, that was the highest alcohol beer in the world. But quickly, there was a German brewer that kind of jumped in. They kind of went back and forth. In 2010, they released Sink the Bismarck at 41% alcohol by volume, followed later that year by Into History at 55% alcohol by volume, and the ABV wars were on. A couple years later, in 2011, partly because of these beers, they started gaining notoriety and some traction, and they needed to expand. So they went to the crowdfunding market and basically sold off 8% of the brewery to their fans, their customers, what have you, to help fund expansion, which is kind of cool. It's better than going to the hedge funds or, what have you, for money like that. Move ahead a couple years to 2013. They start the first 3 seasons of a TV show they did on the Esquire network. I don't remember the name of the show, but the theme was they went to different cities and would brew a different beer based on local ingredients or a local theme. I think the show they did here in Vegas, they used like edible gold leaf or something crazy like that. The next year in 2014, they moved their headquarters from Fraserburgh to Elon, Scotland, where they are headquartered today, and the main production facility is at. Speaking of brewing beer, and if you're into home brewing, you would love that show. But in 2016, they open sourced their beer recipes. I don't think it's every product, but I think it's just kind of their bigger brand beers, or more popular beers. You could go on their website and find the recipe and brew it on your own. Maybe one of these days I might do a clone of one of their breweries. But I thought that's real cool as a home brewer myself. Lastly, in 2022, or specifically December of last year, they opened a spot here on the Strip. They're right by MGM. Great big patio, big restaurant bar area. They also have an R&D brewery there. It's a 20-barrel system, but it's more for R&D purposes than necessarily production. But they're brewing beer right on the Strip, which is kind of a cool idea. Real quick, let's talk about some of their other beers. They got a pretty decent line of beers. First is Punk IPA, 7.5% ABV. It's kind of a classic West Coast IPA. And their flagship beer. I'm pretty sure it's one of the beers that you can get the recipe for too. This is the one that you'll see pretty much everywhere they're sold. This is one of those that you don't necessarily have to go to the liquor store to find. You should find this, sometimes on your grocery store if they have a good selection of beer. Next is Great Big Baby, 13% alcohol by volume. This is a Maplewood aged barley wine. I find that kind of cool because a lot of times in these aged beers, whatever, it's generally a bourbon barrel or maybe a wine barrel, sherry barrel, what have you. But Maplewood is a little different kind of gear, so that's kind of cool. Next is Elvis Juice, 6.5% ABV. This is a grapefruit-infused IPA. Kind of got me confused. I'm not necessarily an Elvis historian, but out here in Vegas, so many Elvis stores, you just kind of know about Elvis. And everything I know, I don't know where the grapefruit comes in. Of course, we know that he loves a good niner and butter sandwich, but not grapefruit, but whatever. If it works, it works. Lastly is Strength in Numbers, 57.8% ABV. It's an ice bock. This is a collaboration with a brewery, Bushwood, I'm sure, called Schwarzbrau. This was the brewery in Germany that they kind of went back and forth on who had the highest ABV beer, what have you. But apparently they decided to come together and collaborate. Hopefully the ABV wars are over and nobody got hurt. Well, before we try this particular beer, though, let's check out stats. So today I thought, since we're drinking a, Caddyshack themed beer, we talk a little bit about Caddyshack. One of my favorite movies. Again, I think one of the funniest movies, just kind of, that we've seen in our lifetimes, basically. Did a little research, found some fun facts. I've seen the movie a ton of times, but I didn't know these facts, and there's some quite interesting ones. And we'll start off with one that kind of boggles my mind. If you remember the soundtrack of the movie, it was the great Kenny Loggins. If you needed a soundtrack in the 80s, Kenny Loggins was your guy. But he was the second choice. The first choice, and this boggles my mind, was Pink Floyd. Now remember, this movie came out in 80. Pink Floyd was doing The Wall. Probably their darkest album, really politically charged. I don't think that Pink Floyd Caddyshack, like I said, I love Floyd, but I'm not sure that would have worked. I found that quite interesting. If you remember the Baby Ruth scene, where the candy bar goes in the pool and everybody freaks out, apparently the Murray brothers, remember Bill's in the movie, but also a couple of his other brothers are, apparently they had pulled this trick in high school, so they kind of knew, that would work. They kind of dry run the thing, which is kind of funny. Speaking of the Murray brothers, the oldest Murray brother, Ed, had actually won a Caddy scholarship. Now, if you remember, one of the major themes in the movie was Danny Noonan trying to win the, Caddy scholarship. I remember as a kid watching the movie thinking, Caddy scholarship, was that even a thing? But apparently it was, and one of the Murray brothers had won one, which is kind of cool. The original premise of the movie was supposedly to be Animal House on a golf course, which they kind of hit in a certain sense, just, funny, low-grade buffoonery. But the movie was really supposed to focus more on the caddies, thus Caddyshack. But when they got to shooting, Bill Murray being Bill, Chevy Chase in his prime, and Rodney, just being Rodney, they had to shift the movie. They had, from what I gather, up to 4 hours of footage. They could have done a 4-hour movie. They just realized those guys are just so funny. We have to kind of move the movie their direction. Speaking of Rodney Dangerfield, he was apparently the second choice to play that character. Don Rickles was supposedly the first choice. I love Rickles, and if this movie would have been shot 10 years earlier, he would have been your guy. But in 1980, Rodney was just one of those guys, known for the 80s and just kind of, exemplified what the 80s were, and again, kind of like the Pink Floyd thing. I love Floyd, and I love Don Rickles, but I don't know if them two worked with the movie. Well, all right, enough about that. Let's drink a beer. Real quick, this is a Pilsner style beer. All right. Nice, thick, white head. I got a slight haze, but that might not be the cleanest glass in the history of ever. Let's give her a smell. Ooh, yeah, nice. Nice little pop in your nose. Not real aggressive, but nice little snoutful. Let's give her a try. Ooh, that's nice. Just a nice, easy drinking, perfect kind of beer when you're out playing golf. It's gonna be a little warm. You don't want anything thick, heavy. You know, ABV wise, this is a 5% sessionable type beer. I definitely would drink this on the golf course. Lighter bodied, not necessarily like a light beer, but on the lighter end. Short, not much of an aftertaste, just a little crispy hop bite toward the end. Faint malt sweetness up front, but again, just an easy drinking Pilsner. You know, really kind of matches the style naturally, but pretty well executed beer. Just a really nice drinkable brew. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or beers that you'd like me to try, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.